Welcome to our weekly 3-minute therapy podcast, where we discuss the principles behind 3-minute therapy, which has been called REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, a type of radical therapy when it came on the scene in the 50s and was devised by Albert Ellis. And the basic premise of REBT is that it's never situations themselves that cause your emotions, but rather it's your thinking about situations. And if you listen to people talk, surprisingly, that insight is, they ignore that insight and they would say, this made me upset, or this made me angry, or I'm stressed because I have a deadline at work, or I'm angry at you because you lied to me. But that's not the way emotions work. So always look for your thinking. And when you have disturbed emotions such as anxiety, depression, anger, guilt, then look for a must, a should, a demand on yourself, on others, or on situations. And to overcome your demands and overcome your emotional disturbance, question, challenge, and uproot your must and shoulds. And I'm here with my co-host, Mick Berry. Mick, did you want to say anything in introduction of REBT?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, very good. So today we will discuss lying or dishonesty. So the first few things to recognize about lying or dishonesty is that there's never a must, there's never a reasonable must or should about lying. I must not lie. You must tell me the truth. You're a bad person if you do. So look for your must and look for your should if you are involved in a lying situation, and question it. Also, in terms of self-rating, it's good to rate what you do, but don't rate your total self. So if you lie or someone else lies to you, this doesn't make you a liar. It makes you an imperfect human who acts imperfectly and lies at times. So don't condemn yourself and others when there's lying involved. So part of this is, yes, Mick?
Well, I wanted to say that by and large, lying is rotten behavior because it's dishonesty, and REBT does advocate for honesty. So just because you're not a bad person if you lie, that doesn't mean that it's good to lie. There are some circumstances, I think, that it would be good to lie in, but by and large, if you want to be trusted and live honestly, lying is not good behavior.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. Usually lying is not good behavior, but sometimes it makes sense to lie to protect yourself. If someone says, give me all your money you have, and you lie and say, I don't have any money, then that could be self-protection. Mick?
Well, also, there is Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah,
I believe Immanuel Kant said, under no circumstances whatsoever should you lie. If a man comes up to your door and says, somebody's trying to kill me, can you protect me? And you let him in the house. And then somebody knocks on the door and says, I'm looking for so and so. And this guy just entered your house and says people are trying to kill him. I believe Immanuel Kant says you should say, yes, he's right here, which I think is utterly ridiculous. I think you ought to just lie completely and say, I've never seen him before. Go away.
yeah, and the basic idea there is lying to others to protect yourself in some situations, or to protect someone else makes sense. Yeah, Mick?
Yeah, and also lying to protect someone else. I personally think Immanuel Kant was making a demand on the world. We must not ever lie, thinking that this would lead to an entirely honest world. Well, an entirely honest world is not always a good thing, for God's sake.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yep. And in fact,
And
there are instances of, we can call them white lies. As you mentioned, Albert Ellis said they're white lies and black truths. If somebody says, do I look bad in this shirt? And you're getting ready to give a talk, and there's no time for him to change the shirt, it's best for you to say, no, you look fine, even if he doesn't look that great, because there would be no time to change his shirt, and it doesn't take a whole lot of thought to know that he probably won't feel good getting on stage thinking he doesn't look good in the shirt.
yeah, so that would be a white lie. That makes sense. And what's a black truth?
A black truth would be telling somebody you're not a good speaker right before they get ready to speak, even if they um, could use improvement on their speaking. If you tell somebody something like that right before they're getting ready to perform, it would disrupt their performance and make their performance and their speech even worse.
Yeah, so it's the other side of the coin of a white lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are various reasons why people lie. And as mentioned earlier, they have some preferences that they escalate into demands, such as to impress others or get admiration. So people often prefer that. But when they think I must impress others and get admiration, then that often leads to lying to accomplish that. Also, to feel good about oneself. So you might lie to think of yourself as doing well, even though it's not the case objectively. Sometimes people might lie to obtain a reward. So if there's a reward for doing something well, some people might lie to get that reward. Also, to escape awkward situations. If you're with a group of people or with someone and you want to leave and you don't want to say, well, I'm bored with you, you might say, well, I have another appointment now, so I can't talk. So that might be a way to escape an awkward situation. Yes, Nick?
Yeah, I was going to say also there is behavior that wouldn't necessarily be thought of literally as lying, but I read interviews with some reformed criminals who talked about, there was one individual who talked about how he stole all the time and he just thought he was entitled to whatever it was he could steal because he was a better person than the person he was stealing from. And he there is lying to himself in thinking, I'm a better person. That's not true. You're not a better person. And he was also lying to himself thinking this was good behavior. It's not good behavior. So, aside from lying to other people, you can also lie to yourself, which is not good. And it took a lot for him to change his ways because he was rating himself and had to realize that in order to correct his behavior, he had to accept, gee, I'm capable of bad behavior. I'll do better to change the bad behavior rather than putting himself down. He put the behavior down.
Yeah, exactly. Another reason people might lie, and sometimes this could be a white lie, is just to maintain privacy. So if someone asks you, um, what what were you thinking when you said that, you might want to lie because you don't feel like discussing what you were thinking. So sometimes lying serves that purpose. But the main idea that we're trying to convey is that lying is always a preference. You can prefer to lie or prefer not to lie, but there's no reason you have to lie for these reasons we gave. Mick?
I didn't know that was the main thing we were discussing. I thought we were just talking about lying in general. And when somebody is lying, as I mentioned most of the time, it's not a good idea. I think there is a demand connected to it when somebody is lying so that it creates a detrimental situation.
Yes. So often, as we said earlier, there's a demand connected to it, but sometimes there's a preference or a reasonable preference.
Yeah, but if there's a detrimental situation and somebody goes ahead and does it anyway, do you think there's a demand connected to it?
Uh, no, not necessarily. There's not necessarily a demand. For example, if you lie on your income taxes, which many people do, there's not necessarily a demand, but there could be a preference that I prefer to pay fewer taxes, so I'll just be creative on my income taxes. Okay, any last words, Mick, that you wanted to mention?
Well, I just wanted to analyze a situation where somebody lies and uncover what the demand would be, such as, well, what would an example of a detrimental lie be? Can you think of anything?
A detrimental lie?
I suppose, let's say, I somebody wanted to know if I took out the garbage and I didn't want to admit that I hadn't taken out the garbage. And so I lie and say, yeah, I took out the garbage and the garbage never gets taken out. So we're faced with a rotten situation here. Now, why would I have lied if I'm just feeling too lazy and don't want to take it out? And I'm not thinking about the need for the garbage to get taken out. So I just lie about it. I suppose a demand in that is I I I don't well what would the demand be? I can't stand the difficulty of taking out the garbage, so I just rather lie about not doing it.
Yeah, that could be a demand. Another detrimental lie could be if you lie too much to the IRS, then you might get caught and there could be fines, penalties, and things like that that you'd like to avoid.
But aside from penalties and fines and things you'd like to avoid, I personally find I like living a life in which I'm honest, because if I'm not, I don't like being dishonest. It's being dishonest is bad behavior and I don't want to do it. And
Yeah,
I knowing that I can depend on myself to be honest, not to rate myself, but it's nice knowing that by and large I can depend upon myself to be honest. So I'm rating my behavior and appreciating and enjoying my good behavior.
yeah. Well, I think we covered most of the subject of lying and REBT. Any final words, Mick?
Nope.
Okay, very good, very good. So I would like to thank you, Mick, for joining me on this topic. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist, and thank you, Chris Rossini, our tech engineer. Comment below if you have thoughts about what we discussed or questions, or if you would like to suggest a subject for a future podcast or be a guest on our podcast. We haven't had a guest for quite some time. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to the 3 Minute Therapy podcast to do what, Mick?
Just stay on the rational side of life.